Part of the beauty of pro wrestling is that it is truly a place where people can be creative. A match starts with a bell and ends with a bell, and anything that happens in between those two chimes is up to the performers in the ring and the storytellers in the back. You can have a technical classic, an acrobatic highlight reel, whatever this was. But sometimes creative ideas are squashed for one reason or another, and in a lot of those cases, that's probably a good thing. I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling. Let's take a look at 7 insane match ideas that were rejected. Now, before we get into this, we appreciate your support, so if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and plex that notification bell. And for all of you that are commenting brother on these videos, we appreciate it. A good brother to you as well. Number 1, WrestleMania Go Boom. Mick Foley lost his first retirement match over 23 years ago when he was defeated by Triple H in an amazing Hell in the Cell match. With his full-time career being that long ago, it's possible, actually probable, that a lot of today's fans only know him for either being tossed off at the Hell in the Cell by Undertaker, or for lighter fare like This Is Your Life, The Rock, or Mr. Sacco. And if you're one of those people who are unfamiliar with his complete body of work, know that Mick Foley absolutely earned the nickname, the Hardcore Legend. Who was the first person to introduce thumbtacks into WWE? Mick Foley. Barbed wire baseball bat? Mick Foley. Are you familiar with the Nestea plunge? Yeah, don't worry, it's totally relevant. In Nestea commercials, people would taste this delicious drink and then fall backwards into a refreshing pool. It also claimed to be the best wet yet, although all drinks are wet, so yeah, that's a weird flex. Anyhow, here's Mick Foley's version of the Nestea plunge. That, my friends, is a flat back bump from an apron onto an exposed concrete floor. Ouch. That is insane. You know, wrestling is wrestling, and everyone steals everything from everyone, but nobody's stealing Mick Foley's Nestea plunge. His hardcore accomplishments are absolutely legendary. Heck, he lost an ear in a match with Vader. And if your wrestling knowledge is only centered around North America, then you need to know that what Mick Foley did in Japan was way crazier. In Japan, along with some smaller organizations here in the States, things just go much further than what the WWE is willing to condone. Broken glass, light tubes, and most impressive of all, explosives. This is known as death match wrestling, and on August 20th, 1995, in the Kawasaki Stadium in Japan, Mick Foley would win an 8-man tournament to be crowned the king of the death match. In the main event tournament final, Foley would square off against his good buddy Terry Funk in a no-rope, barbed wire, C4 explosive, exploding ring death match. That just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Why am I bringing this up? Well, because in 1998, Foley pitched an idea for a series of 7 matches with Terry Funk, each more violent than the next, that would culminate in a rematch of that tournament final match, live via satellite from Funk's Double Cross Ranch in Amarillo, Texas. And that no-rope, barbed wire, C4 explosive, exploding ring death rematch would take place at WrestleMania 14. And what's even more insane than that idea, and when we say insane, we mean insanely awesome. Sorry, more insane than that was the fact that Vince McMahon was totally on board. The plan was switched from 7 matches to just a few, but the end result was going to be an exploding ring death match at the Showcase of the Immortals. Unfortunately, when Mike Tyson signed on to be the special enforcer for the main event, concerns arose with the event getting so much more mainstream publicity that this might not be the right time for such a violent spectacle. As a consolation prize at WrestleMania 14, Foley and Funk teamed up to win the WWF Tag Team titles from the New Age Outlaws in a very entertaining dumpster match. The crime in all of this is that when AEW was the organization that was finally able to introduce mainstream audiences in the United States to a death match, well, this happened. Wah, wah. Number 2, Johnny Creativity. We mentioned that Mick Foley and Terry Funk ended up competing in a dumpster match at WrestleMania. That's basically a hardcore match where the winner is the first team to stuff their opponents into a dumpster. Pretty basic concept, right? It falls under the cram your opponent into things style of matches like a casket match or an ambulance match. Now, most of you probably know this guy. He goes by many names: Johnny Nitro, Johnny Impact, Johnny TV, the mayor of Slamtown, but he's probably best known for his run in WWE as John Morrison. And aside from having like 40 abs, he's a pretty creative guy. The way he used to save himself from Royal Rumble eliminations, the way he integrated parkour into his wrestling styles, we're big fans. Now, apparently, he was pitching all kinds of different specialty matches to Vince McMahon, and Vince would keep shutting him down. First of all, there was the tanning bed match, where the winner would have to lock the loser into a tanning bed. Now, this one might not do much for you, but what if I told you his opponent was going to be the very pale Sheamus? But yeah, no dice. Vince didn't go for it. Funny thing about this one is they'd end up using that exact same premise for a Snickers commercial a couple years later. His other brainstorm was a match where you'd have to stuff your opponent into a porta potty and then knock it over. Vince didn't go for that either, although that may have been a little too derivative of the Crapper 316 stunt they pulled during the Attitude Era, but let's not act like Vince is averse to people getting doused in human waste. Actually, let's move on. Number 3, Sweet Shin Breakage. One of wrestling's great what-ifs revolves around WrestleMania 13. What we ended up with was The Undertaker defeating Sid for the WWF title, and Bret Hart and Steve Austin squaring off at one of the greatest, if not the greatest, WrestleMania matches of all time. But that wasn't the original plan. Coming out of the Royal Rumble, Shawn Michaels had just defeated Sid to regain the WWF title, and Bret Hart, Vader, and The Undertaker had legitimate beef with Steve Austin, as he had eliminated all three of them from the Royal Rumble after he himself had already gone over the top rope and to the floor. A fatal four-way elimination match between the Rumble participants would be held at In Your House Final Four to determine who would face Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. Now, as most of you know, it didn't quite happen that way. Michaels would forfeit the championship due to an injured knee, or a missing smile, or a lost whoopee, and the In Your House match would be changed to determine a new champion. Bret Hart would win the match, then promptly drop the title to Sid the next night on Raw, and then we'd get the matches we ended up with. All of this begs the question, what would have happened if Shawn Michaels could have competed? There are a bunch of different stories, some saying Bret versus Shawn would be for the title, some say Undertaker versus Sid was always meant to be for the title, but it's pretty clear that those were the two main matches. Even an issue of WWF magazine at the time features the quartet as the four main talents on the show, no mention of Steve Austin at all. In Bret's book, Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling, Bret describes a situation where Sid and Taker would face each other for the title, while Bret and Shawn would compete in a ladder match where Shawn's hair would be on the line. Actually, that sounds pretty sports entertaining. But the reason this whole fiasco is on this list is because of an idea that was floated by Bret, approved by Shawn and Vince, that ended up never being used. The finish of the match would be Shawn going for his sweet chin music finisher, with Bret catching his foot and breaking his ankle. The illusion was to be created with a combination of some kind of gimmicked boot and a breaking sound effect being played under the ring. From there, an injured Shawn would tap out or pass out in Bret's sharpshooter submission hold. And that sounds awesome. Surely, with all of the super kicks being thrown around today, somebody can make that finish a reality. Number 4, Tommy Gunn. We're going to step out of WWE for a second and talk about Tommy Dreamer and his time in ECW. Oh, Tommy, the things he was willing to do for his art. Kendo stick to the groin, choke slam through an absolute sea of tables, drinking the Undertaker's tobacco spit. Oh, all right. Well, if you never saw any of the Tommy Does Gross Stuff vignettes from his time in WWE, do yourself a favor. Avoid them at all costs. Ugh. But the reason Tommy Dreamer is on this list today is because of the time he pitched the idea where he would be shot in the ring. With a gun, with a real bullet. Now, Tommy would describe it like this on his House of Hardcore podcast, saying, I pitched this to Paul. I want to go out there in the ECW arena. We were famous for turning the lights off and turning the lights on, and someone would be there. So I wanted to go out there, and word had gotten out of what was going on in the talent raid. It's the era of wrestling dirt sheets, so I came up with the idea where I'd stand in the middle of the ECW arena, and I would address the situation. All of a sudden, the lights would go off and then come back on and nothing. I look to my left, and I look to my right, and nothing changes. Maybe it was a power surge. Then I'd begin talking and telling the tale of what went down. Then out of nowhere, I'd see a red dot on my shoulder. Then I'd look and go, huh? And psh, I'd get shot for real in the ECW arena. Huh. Brilliant. What could possibly go wrong? ECW owner Paul Heyman, who after a fire stunt at the ECW arena went screwy, knew quite a few things about what could go wrong, totally vetoed the idea. Dreamer would say Heyman responded with, "We cannot shoot you," and I said, "Why?" Paul said, "What if we shoot a fan?" And I said, "Hire a sniper." Paul said, "Okay, you want to get shot like a flesh wound, I get it. What if it hits a bone and shoots into the crowd and hits a fan? There's no way you'll hit a fan." Finally, Terry Funk, of all people, was the voice of reason. This is, of course, the same Terry Funk from the death matches, the same Terry Funk who encouraged Mick Foley to start his legendary Hell in the Cell match with The Undertaker on top of the cage. Actually, that was a pretty good idea. But Funk would say, "It'll never work. It's a horrible idea. When my father got shot in Amarillo, it killed our territory. Yeah, my dad got shot with a .22 on the air. We came back, the house was packed, and it was great. We came back in a Texas death match. My father got shot for real, in his buttocks. It's Texas, and we shoot people. Here's the main thing. They didn't give a finish. If a man shoots you, and you come back and you don't kill him, you expose wrestling as fake." This business is amazing. So they're talking a guy out of hiring someone to shoot him with the argument that it's been done before and the fans won't buy it. Yeah, you could die. A fan could die. That's fine. It'll ruin our gates going forward? Oh, maybe we should reconsider. Number 5, totally screwed. It's pretty clear that we're not fans of Money in the Bank here. The matches are fun car crashes, but they all kind of blend together, and the Money in the Bank briefcase really seems to stunt the character's elevation. Your first world title victory should be an amazing journey with twists and turns and a character arc. Money in the Bank pretty much just fast forwards to the end. And that's exactly what had happened to Liv Morgan in 2022 when she won the Money in the Bank briefcase and then immediately cashed in on Ronda Rousey that exact same night. Problem was, she was a champion who was never properly elevated, and they weren't comfortable enough to just let her beat Ronda Rousey without a screwy finish. Check out their title match at SummerSlam 2022. Rousey has Morgan in her armbar, however Ronda's shoulders are on the mat. As the referee's counting 3, Morgan taps out. So it's not enough to let Morgan win by a sneaky roll-up, she has to technically lose. So when it came time to end the Liv Morgan experiment and put the title back on Rousey at Extreme Rules 2022, to her credit, Rousey at least wanted to make Liv look as badass as possible. On her YouTube gaming stream, Rousey would say, "I pitched the finish to be on thumbtacks. Liv would put down thumbtacks, she'd powerbomb me into the thumbtacks, and as a repeat of our finish from before, I'd go for the armbar and the thumbtacks, but they'd start counting the pin, and I'd have to push up onto my one shoulder like into the thumbtacks to keep the armbar on. And Liv would be biting her hand, trying not to tap, and then pass out face down into the thumbtacks." Whew, face down in the thumbtacks? Alright, that is pretty badass. Rousey would say this was shot down because we can't do thumbtacks anymore, like legally, we can't purposely injure people and cut their skin and stuff. She would try to get around this by pitching screws instead, which honestly seems so much worse. Oh my gosh, stab me with thumbtacks all day long, don't put a screw in me. What we ended up with was Rousey putting Morgan in a submission hold while kinda squishing the back of her head with a piece of table, kinda. Morgan weirdly passed out while smiling. At any rate, it did not get over, and obviously didn't push Morgan to the next level, as they're still not comfortable letting her beat top women without outside shenanigans. Number 6, really bad idea. She's the most dominant woman on the Raw brand. She held the Women's World title for over a year and never lost it. She's the Eradicator, Rhea Bloody Ripley. Wow, and one look at her is all it takes to get what she's all about. Pitch black hair, piercings, and enough tattoos to have The Undertaker being like, "Whoa, relax there." We love her though. Her character is so perfect, her in-ring abilities are on point, we anticipate Mommy being on top for quite some time, and we always get a bit of the giggles that this is how she got her start. So fond of tattoos as Ripley, she has stated that she wants to become the most tattooed person ever, which, You know, the bar is pretty high on that. And this would be pretty tough seeing as how the WWE wouldn't allow her to get upper body tattoos for quite some time. However, it seems like the ban on that has since been lifted. What puts her on this list, though, is the idea she had for the 2019 NXT Women's War Game match. In the bout, Ripley would lead a team that featured Candice LeRae, Tegan Nox, and Dakota Kai. Well, Dakota Kai and Tegan Nox would never quite make it to the ring. They'd face off against Shayna Baszler, Io Shirai, Kaylee Ray, and Bianca Belair. And wouldn't you know, Ripley had herself quite a unique little idea for something she could do with Bianca. On the Wrestling Friends podcast, Ripley would say, I wanted to plan a spot where Bianca, I don't know how it was going to work, but I wanted to make it work. I wanted to get a battery-powered tattoo gun, and I wanted Bianca to rip the fishnets in my pants, and I wanted Bianca to tattoo lips on my leg while everyone held me down. I wanted it so bad, they were like, I don't know if that's hygienic. Yeah, true. Yeah, a wrestling mat is a lot of things. Hygienic is not one of them. Ever noticed how when some wrestlers get into the ring, they'll wipe their feet on the apron first? I think William Regal's probably most famous for this. That's because they walk across a cruddy arena floor covered in who knows what before getting into the ring that they're about to roll around in. And during the tattooing process, bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens can enter the body through the tiny punctures made by the tattoo needle, and contaminants can lead to infections, which can cause pain, swelling, and in severe cases, way more serious health risks. So, sorry Rhea, maybe someday you'll luck out and they'll book a match that takes place in an actual tattoo parlor. Number 7. Trust Folly. The WWE was firing on all cylinders rolling into WrestleMania 2000. Even with Steve Austin out recovering from surgery, the main event was white hot with Triple H, The Rock, and Mick Foley having amazing matches. The mid-card was bolstered by the signing of the Radicals, giving us great bouts between Chris Jericho, Kurt Angle, Chris Benoit, and for the first time in a long time, the tag team division was heating up. The Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys were stealing the show with their insane ladder matches and table matches. So, when the WWE made the call to cram all of the teams and all the gimmicks together in the first ever triangle ladders and tables match at WrestleMania 2000, we were downright giddy. And they delivered. Edge and Christian would claim the titles in a show-stopping bout. They'd run it back at that year's SummerSlam, adding chairs to the mix and dubbing it the first ever TLC match, tables, ladders, and chairs. Once again, the match was amazing, and once again, Edge and Christian left with the tag team belts. So, for the grand finale, they were going to do it one more time at WrestleMania 17 in front of a packed house at the Houston Astrodome. Heading into it, it was believed that the Hardys were finally going to get their win, and when it was revealed to them that Edge and Christian were going to get the win for the third time, things got heated backstage. In Matt and Jeff Hardy's book entitled Exist to Inspire the Hardy Boys, they discussed how upset they were when they realized they weren't going to get that WrestleMania victory. They were told that they shouldn't even want the belts because whoever won was going to get destroyed a few weeks later by The Undertaker and Kane, but hey, a WrestleMania win is a WrestleMania win. From there was a hot debate over Edge performing his iconic ladder spear. Seeing as he was a heel and he was winning, shouldn't the biggest moments go to the other teams? And should that move go on last? The fear was that the whole thing was very complex, and Jeff Hardy leapfrogging across several ladders before ending up in that position for the spear. Jeff assured them that it would be no problem, and then proceeded to mess it up every time they practiced it. He assured them he'd get it right during the match. Spoiler alert, he did not. Things got so heated during the pre-match prep that a frustrated Jeff would almost boycott doing the match entirely, and refused to do his swanton finisher through Rhino and Spike Dudley, instead pitching a dead man fall backwards through the table. Everyone hated this idea, and Matt would say, what are people supposed to think when you go up there? Are they supposed to think that you're up there, ready to do the swanton, and then a sniper shot you and you just fell backwards through a table? Jeff did not find that funny. Meanwhile, Tommy Dreamer was probably like, yeah, that makes total sense. Cooler heads would eventually prevail, and we would get the legendary match. And the winners would promptly be squished by bigger singles wrestlers a few weeks later. Well, there's our list. Did we forget any other insane WWE match pitches that were rejected? If so, please leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and swanton bomb that notification bell. Until next time, I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling saying bye-bye.